Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. My books are available on Amazon as well as my website. Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children,
Hmm.
and Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through Foster Care and Court Systems. And also, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going, and you will find that in the podcast notes. I have Tim Goldich back on. He was last on season 4, episodes 32, 58, 80, 120, and 149, and season 5, episodes 24 and 48. The last time he was on, we spoke about blame and accountability, female power, and patriarchy. Today, we're going to talk about gender, political spirituality. So this will be very interesting. Welcome, Tim Goldich.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. It's
Yeah,
great.
glad to have you on. So, how does this work with the gender, political spirituality?
Well, it doesn't.
No.
That's the problem. There's no spirituality in gender politics. Gender politics is a cesspool.
Hmm.
I'll define gender politics as the politics of gender complaint. But surely there's more to gender than just complaint.
Hmm.
And this complaint is very negative outlook. Uh, it's like on one side, everyone's convinced that men have the power, women are the victims. And on the other side, everyone's convinced that women have the power and men are the victims. And these two ideologies just, are at loggerheads, right? I mean, there's no resolve between these two points of view. And everyone suffers for it, I think.
Hmm.
So,
Right. People are not working together.
no.
Uh, I wish they would. I see a lot of the father's rights, and then the mothers are wondering why there's no mother's rights. And if people would work together and make it parents' rights,
Yeah. And
as
even
an
children's rights.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, as an example that I can give you,
Uh-huh.
and because it just creates more division.
Oh boy. Yeah, the division is terrible. I mean, just look at the incredible plummeting of birth rates.
Hmm.
Now, some will argue that that's a good thing that we're lowering the population. Okay, well, let's just set that aside for a moment, though, and look at what this indicates about gender relations.
Hmm.
If men and women aren't getting along well enough to breed anymore, that's pretty serious. That's really indicates a terrible intersex Cold War, as it were.
Hmm.
And both sexes have convinced themselves that they don't need the other,
Hmm.
and that they're better off with it alone. And yeah, well, I don't know, given the suicide rate, I don't know if that's so true.
Hmm.
But anyway, yeah, so gender politics is a cesspool. So well, first of all, let's take a look at what does spirituality mean?
Hmm.
And that'll mean different things to different people, but I will I will define spirituality for myself as my relationship to the world.
Hmm.
What is that? Is it an angry relationship or is it a loving relationship? Is it a grateful relationship or a resentful one?
Hmm.
Am I at odds with the world or am I sort of congruent with the world, flowing with the world? See, and I will suggest that feminism is the absolute antithesis of a spiritual approach to gender issues and gender politics. That it's spiritual poison for women that drink the Kool-Aid.
Hmm.
First of all, they're told that women are the powerless victims in all things, which is emotionally self-fulfilling, and it's living a lie. Basically, women are screwed in everything along the respect axis, but men are screwed in all things along the love axis.
Hmm.
Which one's better? Which one's worse? I don't know.
Mhm.
Also, women are just all these lies that women are told that all fault is male, and therefore women are invited to be self-righteous, and that's spiritual poison. They're told that oh, what that there's some boogeyman hiding behind every bush, which is frightening, and that's not no way to have a relationship with the world.
Mhm, mhm,
And what else that their biology only betrays them or convinces so many women to low prioritize marriage, home, family, parenting, realms in which many women are at their happiest.
mhm,
It's no surprise when you take a look at all the very, very negative, very embittering, very depressing messages that feminism sends women that, the most feminist cultures produce the least happy women. This is true all over the world.
mhm,
All right, so what I'm suggesting is that feminism is really spiritually poisonous. Okay.
Could you say that about the patriarchy too? Because I know patriarchy has hurt men as well.
Oh, of course. Well, so let's take a look at that then. So I would say that as feminist defined, uh, the patriarchy is a standalone male power, the power that rules our human world.
Mhm,
And I will take the stand that uh, as so defined, the so-called patriarchy never existed. That what we've had and still have is a patrimatrous census, a male-female consensus,
mhm,
and that's been operative like in the gender system itself. And then there's been a patrimatriarchy,
mhm,
which has been a balance of power. So I think this whole notion of a patriarchy needs to be re-examined
mhm,
because it creates the impression it creates the impression that man bad, the overempowered oppressor, woman good, the innocent victim. And that's a moral polarity, and that's spiritual poison also. A woman really needs to re-understand herself as equal partner, that she does now and always has played an equal overall force of influence in the human system, and is equally responsible for outcomes both good and bad.
mhm,
And this redefinition of herself as the equal partner is a lot better than feminism's definition of the female legacy as nothing more than property and chattel.
mhm,
Again, all very embittering messages that come from feminism. This is just not, it's so one-sided. It's
mhm,
feminism is half of gender reality. It's the male power, female victimization half of gender reality, presented as if it were gender reality in its entirety. But it is not. Geez, men also suffer. They just don't elicit as much empathy. Women are more loved, but less respected. Men more respected, but less loved. So, from a spiritual standpoint, I think what we need to look at is the possibility of woman and man calling it even.
mhm,
What if, in the big picture, it all balances out? All right. So, and another really important aspect of this is feminism in no way invites woman to own her own human shadow. It invites her to feel that she's innocent. I'm going to quote Rollo May. He's he he was very, very famous in his day. He was an existential psychologist and widely quoted. And he writes, the awareness that human existence is both joy and woe is prerequisite to accepting responsibility for the effect of one's intentions. My intentions will sometimes be evil. The dragon or the sphinx in me will often be clamoring and will sometimes be expressed. but I ought to do my best to accept it as part of myself rather than to project it onto you. Carol Baker was a gender theoretician that I admire. She said simply, we women need to look at the feminine shadow and own that as a part of ourselves and stop projecting it onto males and onto the masculine. So what's the benefit of owning one's own shadow side? So,
Mhm.
so I will suggest, well, first of all, Carl Jung defined the shadow as that which we hide, repress, and deny. So it's the part of ourselves we don't like. It's the part of ourselves that is infantile. It is narcissistic. It wants what it wants when it wants it. It never wants to be deprived of anything ever. It
Yeah.
never wants to face pain. It never wants to look at, it just wants to. In a sense, my shadow protects me or tries to protect me.
Mhm.
But in so doing, you see, it's perverse. It sabotages me
Mhm.
because I need to look at my own pain. I need to look at my own capacity to do wrong.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've had to discover that for myself when I was selling stereo.
Mhm.
I discovered I wasn't as pure as the driven snow after all.
Aw.
So that's a story. Maybe I'll tell that at the end if we have time.
Mhm.
But I had to learn that there's a little voice in me that's going, just take it, just do it, just buy that giant Snickers bar, please yourself, just have what you want when you want it. But it's just sabotaging me, right? I mean, the Snickers bar is bad for me. I can't, and uh, so if I own my own shadow, then it can't sneak up from behind, take get its hands on the wheel and drive the bus.
Right.
If I'm
Right.
onto it, you see, if I know I have that shadow in me, I know full well. Then when I hear that voice, I know what it is.
Mhm.
I know that voice. Okay, that's the shadow voice. And I can thank it. I can say, okay, thank you for looking out for me. Thank you for wanting me to experience pleasure all the time and never experience pain. Good for you. And I appreciate it. And, you can't get your hands on the wheel and you cannot drive the bus. So, so that's kind of what Rollo May was on about. Um, I'm going to, another short Rollo May quote here, if I can find it quick. To admit frankly our capacity for evil hinges on our breaking through, our pseudo innocence. So long as we preserve our one dimensional thinking, we can cover up our deeds by pleading innocent. The antediluvian, that's pre flood, escape from conscience is no longer possible. We are responsible for the effects of our actions, and we also are responsible for becoming as aware as we can of these effects. So that's the other part of owning my own shadow. I also own the effect that I have on others.
Mhm.
If I'm late for a meeting because my shadow said, I have time to I can stop off at the cleaners and pick up my dry cleaning, right? I can
Mhm.
squeeze that in, and then I'm late for the meeting, and everyone is sort of pays the consequence.
Mhm.
So it's about taking responsibility, and
And not
here,
being selfish, right?
yeah, yeah, not give in to that narcissistic little voice that is what we hide, repress, and deny about ourselves. So accountability.
Mhm.
I think I talked about that last time, right? So I made a distinction between accountability and blame, where blame is all judgment. It's all,
Mhm.
you did this awful thing, you ruined my life. Whereas accountability is you did this, that these were the consequences. I invite you to take responsibility, and so then it's okay. I'll do that. And and accountability is like medicine. It tastes bad, but it's good for us.
Mhm.
So um so this is another thing that feminism deprives women of, is the gift of accountability. And yeah, accountability tastes bad, but it's good for us.
Mhm.
So so everything happens according to a wheel of complicity, where man applies a force of influence on woman, and woman applies an equal force of influence on man. And there's a codependent aspect to that, where each sex kind of enables each other's emotional addictions.
Mhm.
And so it's not just that women need to take a look at their shadow side. It's also that men need to stop coming to the rescue of women exploring their own shadow side. You know, um, so gender political uh, spirituality. Um, so I'm one of the leaders on a personal growth weekend called Path to Spirit,
Mhm.
and part of our teachings is that we identify as four basic cornerstones to happiness, to having a congruent and a grateful outlook on the world.
Mhm.
And they are surrender, acceptance, forgiveness, and thankfulness. All right, so surrender involves whatever we may conceive of higher power.
Mhm.
It's it's some kind of faith that things work out the way they're meant to.
Mhm.
All right. And so there's a surrender to that, that leads to peace. And acceptance, that gets you to the famous Alcoholics Anonymous poem, Serenity poem,
Mhm.
which goes, God grant me the serenity to accept that which I cannot change, the strength to change that which I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Mhm.
So that's acceptance. Acceptance is acceptance of what is. And the opposite, the antithesis of acceptance would be if I'm riding along my bicycle and I ran right into an oak tree, and I get pick myself up off the ground, and I yell at the oak tree, "Why do you have to be so rigid?
Mhm.
Why can't you be yielding? Look at that bark. Why do you have to be such rough bark?
Yeah.
What's the point of railing against what is?" Right? That's what an oak tree is. So part of achieving some measure of spiritual peace is accepting.
Mhm.
And then forgiveness, very important part of it. And first of all, forgiveness, what forgiveness is not. So forgiveness is not condoning the behavior. So if someone in out of spite went and ran over your dog,
Mhm.
uh, you don't forgive that behavior. You don't forgiveness is not, oh, that's okay. I don't mind. Do whatever you want to me. No, that's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is forgiving the wounded child within the other. Okay. And you do it not for their sake, but for your own. Forgiveness is an act of compassion for myself,
Mhm.
because the alternative to forgiveness is resentment. And if I'm going to resent that other person, there's an old saying, resentment is like drinking poison waiting for the other to die.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we forgive the other as an act of compassion for ourselves. And then finally, there's thankfulness, there's gratitude. And so this is all about, um, at the end of every day, just kind of looking. over how the day went, um, and being thankful for all the good things that happened, all the positive things, everything that I enjoyed, everything that went well, everything that um, I have to be grateful for.
Mhm.
All right, so those are like the four cornerstones of happiness as we see it, and as I see it, um, feminism stands in the way of all four. Any woman that guzzles the feminist Kool-Aid can find no surrender, no acceptance, no forgiveness, no thankfulness. All right, so what's the alternative to that? Well, what I've come up with is what I call gender equalism. So that anyone who's willing to call it even is a gender equalist. All right. And uh, this calling it even, this it all balances out, can be viewed from many different angles. One is to look at gender reality as it's played out all over the world, all through history, and just being willing to just call it even. Say, okay, let's just say it came out even.
Mhm.
Another way it all balances out is it's like an outlook, and one can adopt that outlook for one's own mental health purposes, for one's own spirituality. Because the alternative is, my victim's bigger than your victim.
Mhm.
And that's not a spiritual place to come from. And, there's no forgiveness if we believe that the history of gender has been one of men uh, dominating and crushing women under and being hostile and misogynistic and uh, well, how how can the sexes ever reconcile? How can they ever find forgiveness if they're looking at it like that? If they're looking at it as, yeah, men dominated, but women manipulated in equal measure, then you see you can find forgiveness. Then you see it as an equal partnership,
Mhm.
and you see both sexes as having been equal partners and engaging in this gender system and creating it and ratifying it and maintaining it. So, who's to blame? Well, we all are, or none of us are, whatever way you want to look at it.
Mhm.
And and thankfulness. You know what? Men and women have always inspired each other. There's a kind of famous quote. Camille Paglia says that if the feminine had always been in charge, we'd still be living in grass huts. But you see, you can flip that around easy. If there'd never been women, we'd still be living in grass huts because
Mhm.
we've progressed as a species out of uh the resonances, the each sex's effort to compensate, men's efforts to compensate for being male, women's efforts to compensate for being female, and this escalating thing, where man looks at woman and goes, geez, she's got everything. She's got beauty, grace, goodness. She's got home, family, parenting. She's wow, woman's way up here. Oh my God, so man goes, I've got to dig deep into what I got, and so man digs into intellect, competence, prestige, toughness, strength, courage, and the two sexes are vying like this and putting pressure on each other, and the result is our human world as it is today. It's everything depended on that male female dynamic.
Mhm.
If there had never been women, men would just smoke cigars and drink beer and watch Gilligan's Island reruns. It wouldn't have any ambition, and women wouldn't have any ambition. They wouldn't go to beautify themselves and spiritually grow.
Mhm.
So, nothing would happen without both sexes.
Mhm.
So there's so much for the sexes to be grateful for and how each sex gifted the other.
Yeah, most definitely. I saw this thing on Facebook. It was a post where this person said, "My gender is whatever the F makes straight men afraid of me."
Well, yeah, so what kind of
What the heck is
motivation is that, you know? What kind
I'm
of
like, "What is
what
that?"
kind of spiritual path is that to be on?
Oh, like, it just sounds very angry.
Very angry, hostile, yeah.
I don't know what to think of that. I was just looking at I'm like, "I don't know. I just don't know what to think of that."
Right, well, that's, so my plan in life is to inflict the greatest damage I can to my opposite sex. Oh, great plan, that'll get you far, what?
Well, yeah, and it's a matter of treat yeah, like, why would you treat anybody like that, man or woman?
Right,
I mean, that
never.
because you see, like, female judges destroy female litigants, and
Yeah,
you
more
see
so than males do, yeah.
well, I had a male judge desecrate me too, so
Oh,
I'll just say
oh,
about I
no.
had 2 of them, but I did have one nice judge who was super good looking, I couldn't even look at him. I just had to look down. And he was fabulous, he did the right thing,
That's
but the
good,
other ones were bad.
yeah,
But, that yeah, everyone has to work together. We're all stuck in this world together. It's not
that's
getting any
true.
better, people.
That's true, the battle of the sexes, neither sex can win the battle of the sexes, the only win position in the battle of the sexes is a draw,
Mhm.
right? I mean, seems obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, just work together. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, like, I had a guy hold a door for me as I was going into, Walmart, and I thanked him, I totally
good,
appreciated that, I always, reciprocate, or I saw some poor guy carrying a bunch of stuff, and I held the door for him because it's like,
sure,
how is he gonna get the door?
yeah,
Just have to show some more kindness. Just be
yes,
kind to each other.
more generous to each other,
Mhm.
yes, yeah,
And a lot of
forgiveness.
yes. And there's not enough of that. I don't know, they're just it's like the
Uh-huh.
world's going to pot. And
Well, yeah, I mean, it really is, everything's so divided.
mhm. And
The
it doesn't
liberals and
have to be.
conservatives, yeah,
Yeah.
very polarized.
Mhm.
And then what they don't get is they need each other.
Mhm.
Liberalism requires conservatism in order to be functional. Conservatism requires liberalism in order to be functional. When they split off, they really become rather dysfunctional.
Mhm. Yeah, for every equal, there's gotta be an opposite reaction.
Yeah,
I can't I know I'm not saying that right, but
yeah.
but hopefully people will I think if you show kindness towards others as much as you can all the time, that will help other people see that and start behaving the same way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would really love to see gender politics evolve from the politics of gender complaint into something like the politics of gender unity, fairness, and forgiveness.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
You have to have fairness. It just doesn't work out. I mean, if someone's not being fair to you, it's just a horrible feeling.
yeah,
Just I don't know. There's so many unhappy people because, for instance, maybe, they haven't had justice and it just plays with their mind because they haven't had fairness, no justice.
Well,
Then right, and then they're angry. So how do you expect people to behave when they've gone through some trauma like that?
I know. But fairness can be a difficult concept. What one judges as fair, I think, requires an understanding of both perspectives, and then fairness always comes down to a judgment. You judge a thing fair or not. That's a tricky thing. Sometimes it's really obvious.
Mhm.
Oh, geez, slavery, black and white. Sure sure as hell wasn't fair. I mean, that was a
Yeah,
horrific, terrible, terrible, terrible thing, and it was.
the
So
American.
sometimes it's just like crystal clear, but a lot of times it's ambiguous. You don't really know between men and women. Geez, that's really difficult. It's really difficult to determine what is fair, what is balanced. That's something I think for gender equalists. That's my suggestion for a new gender neutral gender politics, gender equalism. They'd have to hash it out. I don't know. I mean, that's something that men and women as gender equalists would have to, and gender equalists would be willing to call it even. They're and they kind of come from a position where, all right, we're gonna call it even in the big picture, all right, but now we're gonna look at this particular issue. Now we're gonna narrow our focus down to this particular issue,
Mhm.
and does this balance out? And maybe it doesn't, and it requires going back and forth, debate, like any politics. It's going to get messy.
Mhm.
You know, there's no utopia. There's no solution to the human condition.
Mm-mm.
We can just make it better. We cannot uh we cannot have heaven on earth, really.
Mhm.
Um, but we can make things better. Feminism is really not the solution. Never was, really. Um, but now it's really pretty poisonous. It's the attitude, it's the outlook.
Mhm.
It's man bad, the overempowered oppressor, woman good, the innocent victim. That's so one-sided.
Mhm.
And it's an outlook on gender reality that's guaranteed to maximize intersex rage, rancor, resentment,
Mhm.
victim vindictiveness, vengeance motives, self-righteousness. It's poisonous.
Right. Well, even like with the patriarchy, that too. Remember going back to the Barbie movie when we discussed that in either
Yeah.
two podcasts ago, when Ken wanted to, I don't know, he wanted to, I don't know, be a businessman or something, and he said, "Clearly, you're not doing patriarchy very well." And the guy answered, remember, he goes, yeah, we're doing it pretty well." Yeah, something like to that effect, but it wasn't like thoroughly explained what they're doing. Did
Yeah, and what do they mean by patriarchy? And also, yeah, the from a politicized male perspective, yeah, that pretty much nails it on the head. Yeah, we're not doing patriarchy very well. That's what it is.
and therefore feminism isn't being done very well either.
No.
So those are two epic fails, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If everyone would just work together for fairness' sake in everything. But that,
Yeah, at least try, have good intention. At least, yeah, right. I mean, that's the ideal.
yeah,
Put out as an ideal that we strive for.
people would have to have a moral view to do things with fairness.
Yep.
It's just it's kind of hard to, I don't know, some people can't do it. I don't know. It depends on how they're raised maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. Some people very much object to it all balances out, either because they believe men have the power and women are the victims, or because they believe women have the power and men are the victims. But
Mhm.
other people just seem to gravitate toward it right away. It's like it feels good to them. Yeah, it all balances out.
Hmm.
That's good because it's a sense right away. Yeah, that's functional.
Hmm.
That's that's sustainable. That's there's light at the end of the tunnel when you look at it all balances out.
Hmm.
There's the possibility of intersex reconciliation. There's possibilities of uh, looking at every gender issue as matters of shared responsibility.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's hope in that kind of outlook, you see.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Uh,
think.
we
Go ahead.
and we deeply need hope,
Hmm.
really.
I agree.
I can do a quick thing of two different ways of looking at pain.
Okay.
So here's a spiritual piece. So one way of looking at pain is that it is a victimization. It is something that is done to us. It is an injustice that has been inflicted upon us. And we may then take the route of I will never be victimized again.
Hmm.
And so that involves building all kinds of armor
Hmm.
around ourselves and being ever vigilant
Hmm.
for anyone boy is going to out to victimize us. And that closes us off a lot. And it's very rigid and it doesn't really help.
Hmm.
The pain is not diminished really by that. And then there's a second way of looking at pain as an inevitable part of life and really no one's fault.
Hmm.
It's like the Rollo May said, we need to view, what did he say? He said, the awareness that human existence is both joy and woe, right? It's going to have both.
Hmm.
The Buddha said we would all experience 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. We
Hmm.
can look at pain as just one feeling along a whole spectrum of feelings, and that it's just an inevitable part of life. And rather than flee from it, to accept it,
Hmm.
right? And once we've accepted and acknowledged our pain, we're free to feel all the other feelings then.
Hmm.
So again, feminism looks at pain as something that men inflict upon women, that it's an injustice that women suffer. But really, from a philosophical standpoint, pain is just pain. We all have it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're not, no, there's really no one to blame. It's part of the human existence.
Hmm.
And we're really better off if we just accept our pain and acknowledge our pain and move on.
Right. Right. And in that way, you forgive yourself and,
Yeah.
or I don't want to say forgive yourself, but let go of what you have suffered.
Yeah. 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 You may need to forgive yourself if you feel that you're the one, from a certain angle, we're all our own worst enemy, right? If I ask someone what primarily stands in your way, the honest answer is, well, I do,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's so, um, yeah, there may be a need to forgive oneself
Hmm.
and let go of it.
Right. Yeah. In order to heal, you have to let go.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, I mean, you do let go, and other people think you're still not healed. And you don't need people like that in your life either. I don't know. So, but I'm glad you came on. How can people reach you if they have any questions?
Well, my email address these days, if you want to put it in the description, is It's T.A., that's Timothy Austin, T.A. Goldich, Goldich, 99 at gmail.com.
Okay. I'll put that in the podcast notes.
Okay.
If they have any questions, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Hmm. Um, well, I don't know. I can't really think that's really what I wanted to say about spiritual alternative to gender politics as we know it.
Mhm. No, I think this was much needed. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
So, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, other platforms I don't know about. And feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And you can find that in the podcast notes. Thank you so much, Tim Goldich. I totally appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.